I was halfway through my coffee when Ben looked at me across the garage, chewing his burrito like it was the most serious thing in the world. "Any man who walks away from you is an idiot, Harper." I didn't answer. I couldn't. Not when the smell of motor oil mixed with morning rain made my stomach roll. Not when the name Asher still sat like acid in my chest. I glanced away and zipped my hoodie higher. "We're not talking about him." Ben held up his hands in surrender. "Fine. Just saying, you can rebuild an engine blindfolded and still bake a killer apple pie. If that man couldn't see your worth, it's his loss." I tried to smile, but it cracked halfway. What I didn't tell Ben was that I was pregnant, and the baby's father, the man I thought I'd spend forever with, had vanished the day I told him. No calls, no texts, just a voicemail that said, "I'm not ready for this," and then silence. I couldn't afford to fall apart. Armin, the garage owner, was the kind of man who'd fire you for sneezing too loud. If he found out, I was done. And this job, this grimy, thankless late shift driving job, it was the only thing keeping a roof over my head. The dispatch radio crackled. "Harper, downtown pickup. You've got 20 minutes. I tossed the coffee, grabbed my cab keys, and climbed in. The engine roared to life under my hands, but the silence beside me was louder. I pressed my hand to my belly and whispered, "It's just you and me now. We're going to make it." And with that, I pulled into the rain, not knowing I was about to pick up a stranger who would change everything. I picked up night shifts as a freelance rideshare driver, sometimes in the pouring rain, sometimes through empty streets lit by neon and regret. I'd drive until my eyes blurred, until the sadness stopped clawing at my throat. Every night, strangers sat behind me, whispering, crying, laughing, fighting. But one night, one man changed everything. He stumbled into my back seat just before midnight. A mess of bruises, a busted lip, and eyes that kept scanning the shadows like something was chasing him. He didn't talk much, just gave me an address outside the city and then fell silent. But something about him wasn't like the others. He didn't feel dangerous. He felt haunted. When he passed out mid-ride, I pulled over, unsure what to do. Take him to the hospital? The police? Something told me he wouldn't want that. So I dropped him off at a run-down motel just off the highway. Gave him water, bandaged his wounds. This motel looked like the kind of place where people went to disappear, or to be forgotten. He told me his name was Liam. He used to be a soldier. And then he was silent. I didn't push. He wasn't ready, and I wasn't sure I was ready to know. And that was the beginning. When I got home, I barely slept. My apartment felt colder than usual, quieter. The old ceiling fan clicked with every turn, and I kept thinking about his hands, how they trembled when he cleaned his wounds, how he didn't ask for help, but didn't push it away either. Why did it bother me so much? Maybe because I knew what it was like to fight alone for too long. The next morning, I found myself parked in front of the same motel without really planning to be there, just to check, just to make sure he was still breathing. I told myself it was nothing, that I was just being cautious, but when I saw him step out of his room, still pale, clutching his ribs, I felt something shift in my chest, something dangerous. He spotted me instantly, his brow lifted, half amused, half surprised. I brought coffee. I held up the cup like a peace offering. "Black, no sugar. You look like a no-sugar kind of guy." He slid into the passenger seat without asking, took the coffee, but didn't drink it right away. A bit later, he chuckled, a real sound this time, warm. And just like that, the silence between us wasn't heavy anymore. The next few days fell into an easy rhythm, if you could call two people dodging their pasts and hiding their wounds easy. Liam crashed at the motel, but each morning he was waiting outside my garage before I opened up. Said he needed something to do. Said he hated sitting still. I let him sweep the floors, organize tools, do simple repairs. Nothing too heavy. His ribs were still healing. But it wasn't about the work. It was about the company. We didn't talk much at first, just exchanged coffee cups and sarcastic comments. Still, the more time we spent together, the more I found myself leaning in. I noticed the way he looked at my hands when I worked, the way he remembered how I took my coffee, the way he listened, not just with his ears, but with his whole body, as if every word I said mattered. And slowly I realized something terrifying. I wasn't just helping him heal. He was helping me feel again. But somewhere in the back of my mind, that same question kept echoing. What if I'm falling for someone who's about to disappear all over again? It happened on a Tuesday night, somewhere between the end of my shift and the beginning of another restless evening. I was locking up the garage when I felt it, a strange flutter low in my belly, like butterfly wings brushing against the inside of me. I froze, pressed my hand against my stomach, waited. There it was again. The baby was moving. My baby. Tears hit before I could stop them, not from pain, but from the sheer weight of it all. Jake? No. Asser, he didn't even want to know. Didn't even ask, just disappeared the moment I became inconvenient. And now here I was, standing in a grease-stained hoodie, 5 months pregnant, heart tangled around a man I barely knew. A man who looked at me like I mattered, but who still wouldn't tell me why he woke up screaming some nights, or flinched when strangers got too close. You okay? Liam's voice cut through the quiet. He stood at the doorway holding 2 takeaway bags from the Thai place we'd started calling ours. The streetlight cast a long shadow behind him, but his eyes were soft, searching. I wiped my face with my sleeve. Hormones. I didn't want to talk about it. He nodded, like he understood the silence too, like he knew how loud the inside of someone's head could be when they weren't ready to speak. By the time the baby started kicking, I was already falling. Not just for him, but for the version of myself I became around him. Stronger, softer, real. But the fear crept in anyway. What if he left too? What if I let myself believe again, only to be shattered all over? What if I was just a temporary stop on his road to nowhere? My past whispered lies louder than the truth in front of me. Until one night, he told me everything. Liam had once worked private security overseas, the kind that didn't make it onto official records. He'd seen things, done things, protected men who should have been in prison, not in boardrooms. And when he finally tried to expose them, they came for him. The night I picked him up, he was running. Not from justice, but from revenge, from people who had already killed his friends. And now he wasn't sure how long he had left. He said he never meant to stay, but something about me, about the baby, made him want to stop running. I remember sitting in the quiet that night, hand on my belly, heart pounding louder than the silence between us. I had every reason to walk away, but I didn't, because for the first time, someone chose to fight for me, and I chose to let them. 6 months later, our daughter came into the world with a scream that shook the walls and a grip that wrapped around my entire soul. We named her Ellie. She's got my eyes and his quiet strength. Liam never left, not once. He held her first, held me second. And every day since, he's kept holding us both. We don't live in a fairy tale. The past still knocks sometimes. The nightmares don't vanish overnight. But love doesn't mean perfection. Sometimes it means choosing to stay, even when it's hard, even when it's terrifying, even when everything inside you tells you to run. And now I want to ask you something. What if the person who broke you wasn't the end of your story, but the beginning of your strength? Because I thought being abandoned was the end of everything, but maybe it was just the start of becoming someone worth staying for.